So, welcome everybody to this very interesting, very relevant session about API security in zero trust environments. And first of all, as again, I invite our audience to submit your questions in the chat section that you can see at the right of the screen. And let me please introduce you to our guests. Uh, we have Ishara Karunarathna and Farasath Ahmed. They are from WSO2, and I will ask you, please, guys, if you can introduce yourselves and give us a brief description of your role within WSO2. Thank you. If you want, we can start with Farah.
Hi, so I'm Farasath Ahamed. So I'm a technical lead at WSO2. So I primarily work in the identity and access management team. And so I contribute mostly to on-prem WSO identity server and cloud product Guardian. So my main focus and area of interest has been like OAuth and like API security and the related domains.
Thank you, Farah. Ishara.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Ishara. I have been. I'm the head of engineering in Identity and Access Management BU in WSO2. So I have been in the industry for around 10 years now, mainly working on identity and access management and the API security area. So in WSO2, we have two main streams to help the organization digital transformation journey. One stream is the API management and the integration, and the other side is identity access management and the API security. So myself and Para mainly working on this identity access management and API security. Yes, obviously this integration and identity connect together as well. So, but we are mainly working on that part. So in our part of the organization, we are having two main products. One is the WSO2 identity server, which work as a key manager for the WSO2 API manager as well. We have another that's the on-prem solution. Then we have a cloud solution, which is Ascadio. So if you have time, you can try out those things as well. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So let's move on to our first question. I'm going to ask, and you guys, you decide who wants to answer
Okay.
each question. All right. So first question: what is zero trust architecture, and why is it needed?
Okay, let me go first. I think this is a good question to open the whole discussion. So basically, zero trust is a kind of new architecture approach that help us to uh, uh, come up with a new way of thinking how to design the security in the platform. So basically, traditionally we used to segment our whole platform, and in different layers we had different trust levels. So in simple terms, we used to think that the internal it's secure and outside it's not secure. So bad guys live in the outside, so we should put all the barriers for not let them to come in. So that's the mindset we have. So, but no longer that concept works, right? So more and more organizations moving into the cloud. So from their internal networks, they take the stuff and deploy those things in the cloud. And if we think about our users, right? So the users in the sense it can be the internal employees in the organization, who our partners, or the end customers. Those are not limited to a particular region or a country, right? Now with the COVID-19 and this globalizations and everything, the customer base is distributed, not the customers, the user base. So even our employees, organization employees, they are working from home. You know, maybe they are working in a different countries. So now we don't have these separations of internal or external and so on. So all the people accessing in everywhere, and the components also deployed in different places. So no longer we can't rely on the parameter based security. So we have to move to a different architecture. So that's where this zero trust come into the picture. So with the zero trust, we have to assume there can be breaches in everywhere in the system. So we should ready for that. And again, it enforces us not to trust anything. Basically, if we want to trust, we have to verify. And again, when we let the people the access, we should give the least privilege for them to do whatever the work they intended to do and no more than privilege they require. So those are the kind of basics in this zero trust. And at the same time, we should do it in the continuous basis. So let's say in the first time we verify some user, we don't trust it and continue. Frequently, we should make sure that's the authentic user accessing our system. So those are the sort of basics in the zero trust. So we should adapt these concepts when we designing our infrastructure. So that's the beauty of zero trust. That's why we need it. Basically, the zero trust, that's a concept initiated around 2010. But I think compared to those times, that is more relevant in this era. So I think that's why we need to focus and implement our all the platforms in that way and adapt to that platform. So
Thank you, Ishara.
that's high level on zero trust, in my opinion.
So I want to add a bit like to what Ishar said. So when we say about zero trust, like Ishar said, like that's like it's built like rather than saying it as an architecture, another way to look at it is it's a change in mindset. Right? So previously we um considered it considered to secure our internal stuff and expect the adversary to come from outside. But now with zero trust architecture, like we assume it's not the case. Like adversaries and threats could come anywhere. So so it's like a shift in the way we design and so it like forces or it makes us think to like design APIs or design systems from inside out rather than like from outside designing from outside, which was like the perimeter based security.
Excellent. Thank you, Farah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in this world that is increasingly interconnecting,
Yeah.
trust is absolutely relevant, right? So, yeah, if you want to trust, you need first to verify. So, yeah. So, next question is, why is zero trust architecture important for API security?
Okay, I'll take this. So like before we move on talk about why zero trust is important. Like we'll have to look at take a step back and see why people worry about API protection now. So like today, like earlier in the day, we had a talk about how like APIs create growth, right? So in that talk, so Marshall was doing talk and like he explained with API adoption, people grow beyond their competitors. So there's a tendency to like quickly roll out their APIs and try to get adoption. But at the same time, when they do that, so they also introduce some risk, right? So APIs. So by design, APIs are meant to be connected and consumed by outside. So while we try quickly to expose our internal data, that also means that we are like kind of creating a risk if we do not like design properly or do not think about security. We are also the impact or the effect of something going wrong and the impact will be high. Like so we'll be exposing critical like functionality or privacy data, or we'll be exposing customer information like personal identifiers. So while the advantages and benefits of API is like highly valued by companies, so we also need to think about the product protection. So Gartner sort of predicted this way back that like APIs are going to be like the mostly attacked vector like by 2022. So I guess Gartner did not foresee COVID and other stuff. So with COVID and other stuff, rapidly, like COVID and with the popularity of APIs, APIs became like a very highly consumed medium, right? And more and more companies love to like expose their APIs so that they don't have to build everything by themselves. So others will build and bring value for them. And so the beauty or the alarming factors that API usage increased by around like 300%. The attacks also like increased about by 600%. So that means like the more you consume, the more people are trying to attack the system. And the other fact that like came out of those researchers was that so many of the people who like exposed the APIs knew about WAFs, knew about gateways, so they had those uh, bases covered. But most of the attacks, like majority of the attacks happened over authenticated session. So it came through a legitimate way, maybe somebody compromising credentials or like somebody hijacking another users. So if we just like secure things at the edge or secure something at the perimeter, and if we don't like build these verify things internally, even among the services and so on, among internal APIs. So that could lead to a lot of issues. And like if we look at like the OS, like top 10 or API vulnerabilities, like most of them you'd see like it's not like unauthorized access. It's more like broken functionalities within. So if you assume that the traffic comes through the gateway is trusted, so you are going to be exposed to these vulnerabilities. So that's why the zero trust model like really helps, because it doesn't assume things, right? It doesn't assume trust anywhere. So even if it is an internal API, even if it is within the network, so everything is verified uh, at each point. And another like a major significant factor of the zero trust is that mostly the verification happen at like very close to the service or at the workload level. So it doesn't like rely on the verification done by somebody else very higher in the layer. So though if you consider those sort of facts, like so yeah, we need the other layers of the usual perimeter security, but that's not enough like in the current state.
Very interesting, Farah. Thank you. I don't know if Shara, if you want to compliment.
I think Farah covers most of the aspects why we need zero trust architecture in API security platforms.
Perfect. So, how do you design for zero trust architecture in API security?
Okay, that's the main question in this session, I would
Mm,
say. Okay, let
right.
me start. So in zero trust architecture, there are several elements. So I'll try to relate those stuff into the API security, how those are relevant. So maybe Farah also can jump in and help me. So the first thing coming to my mind is, so initially we need to identify our overall architecture, understand that architecture. So what are the APIs that we are going to expose? Who are the users going to access our system? And what are the devices they are going to use? So first we need to have that sort of idea about the overall picture. Then we can come up with the risk assessment, threat models, and so on. That's the one thing. And the second thing is we should have a inventory. We should manage the list of APIs we are exposing, and we need to classify those. What are the internal APIs? What are the external APIs? What are the open APIs? So we should track those things. At the same time, if there's a obsolete API, we should have a workflow to remove that API from our system. Another thing. Third thing is the Farah discuss about the secondary vulnerabilities and how they affect the platform. So we should continuously or proactively check our APIs and then make sure those are not vulnerable. Maybe we can use the OIS top 10 as a starting point to identify the security issues. And anyhow, continuous basis, we need to evaluate the APIs we expose and make sure those APIs are not vulnerable. Then the next thing is the verification. Who is going to access? Is it the user, the service? We need to verify. To, there are two levels of verification. One thing is you have to authenticate the users or the device. Then you have to do the authorization. So when it comes to the authentication, there are different mechanisms. You have to use multi-factor authentication and adaptive authentication mechanisms. So then there's something you need to think. So whatever the authentication mechanism you enforce for the users, that should be convenient for the user. If it is not convenient, users try to find a convenient way to remember that authentication. In simply, let's say we enforce a very strong, let's say, the password rules. So then obviously it's very hard for the users to remember. They will write it somewhere. They will store it somewhere. Then it will open for another the security issue. So in that case, this convenient is a key, right? So that's something you need to keep it in mind. Then the authorization. So when it comes to the authorization, you can use mainly, I think in API platforms, they are using the auth2do, auto, and the scope. So in that case, we need to make sure only the limited set of privileges are given to do the whatever the actions. And the same time, we can define policies to uh, check this authorization level. Maybe you can use open policy agent and SATPAL, those sort of technologies to do the authorization. And another important thing when it comes to the authentication and authorization, you need to collect the context information as much as possible. So who are the users accessing the system? What are the devices accessing the system? What is the time frame they are regularly accessed? What are the let's say the preferred browsers they are using? So we should collect this context information, and again we should feed this information back to the our authentication and authorization system. So based on that, we can take more dynamic decisions rather than sticking into the static policies. So that is also help us to do this in the continuous basis. So initial overthreat set, we need to do it in the continuous basis, and that is important. And again, we should use single sign-on. So in that case, we then the users can use one account to access the multiple system. And again, in the background, it helps another way. Basically, even though user doesn't see that he is authenticating several times, in the background, we have the flexibility to authenticate the users multiple times if needed. For example, let's say in our system, we get the information that one user is he did a, let's say, a very big transaction soon. So now he's trying to access another system. If we see there's a risk around that one, before accessing that system, we can enforce another strong authentication step to the user. So that's a way we can model our authentication and authorization system. So then another thing is in the API platform, we need to use behavior analytics techniques. How the API traffic goes, how the users frequently use those APIs. Right? When we think about the most of the open APIs, maybe we are using in the retail. So those are open APIs. So obviously there can be spikes, right? So if we know these patterns, when we can expect a valid spike, right? So in that case, we can distinguish between the legitimate spikes and the other. So in that case, we can enforce that throttling, rate limiting, and so on based on those decisions. To take those decisions, we have to analyze these traffics. And other thing is we need to continuously monitor these systems, right? And get all the information and then feed those information into the security and security information and event management system. So based on that, not only feed those things, based on that, we need to take action. if there's an anomaly in the system, we can generate alerts. Maybe you can give that information to the identity management platform to lock that account or revoke the provided grant and so on. So those are the sort of important things I see when adopting the zero trust concept and build the API security platforms. Maybe Farah, some stuff to add there.
Yeah. So like when we talk about API security, like one of the most like common ways people secure the API is OAuth. Like they use OAuth to secure. So even those standards, we see in the recent developments and so on, they are kind of thinking about this risk and like risk of the tokens being exposed. So or like in case the resource service or the API detects there's a risk, how do they respond? So two example that comes to my mind is like, so there's kind of a specification that is being proposed to say that if an API server or if a resource server kind of detects okay there's a risk or like detects it needs a much strong authentication, so it has like so they're coming up a way to for the client to say okay your authentication or your token is not sufficient for access, you got to go and have a stronger way to authenticate and come back. So that's one thing that's coming up, and the other one was like, so in OAuth or that particular flow, we use a thing called bearer token. So bearer token is simply that you get a token, and so when you present it back, like the server or the API, the security layer usually like sees whether that token is valid. That's and whether it has the right scopes to uh, access the API. But that's not enough, right? So it could be that the token was issued to someone, and a hacker or an attacker somehow manages to steal that token and use. So in that case, the bearer scheme is a bit vulnerable for that. So there's a proposal called demonstrating proof of possession called DPOP. So that kind of tries to address that problem for certain set of applications. So there are efforts going on, and yeah, in the standards community as well. So and the other part is this zero implementing zero trust is not like doing it with one tool, right? So there's no one tool to buy and say okay I have implemented this architecture. It's a combination of, I'd say, mindset, and like even people have to adapt, right? Even developers need to think about zero trust when they are designing the APIs, right? They can't assume okay my I'm within the network, so I can just go get away with HTTP, or I can just I don't need to do additional checks. I don't need to do additional authorization checks at the API level. It's not like that. It's a change in mindset to say okay, what if there's a breach inside, so and so on. So and and also like there are tools available, right? So if you take microservices, so you don't have to implement everything on your own. There are popular service measures and certain techniques and libraries and so on. So you could always do some research and pick the right tool. So as we always say, like you don't need to reinvent the wheel like to implement something. So yeah, so that's
Another thing to add, Marian. So another thing as a developers, we need to think. So if we are building the API platform from the scratch, then we need to think the zero trust from the beginning. It shouldn't be afterthought. Then it's hard. We have to put effort in getting it back, right? So if it's a new platform, try to think zero trust from the beginning. And if it is an existing platform, we obviously we have to go with the phased approach to introduce the zero trust into the platform.
Excellent. Well, unfortunately, our time is up now,
Mhm.
and I had a few more questions, but unfortunately, I cannot ask now anymore. But Thank you so much for your time, for sharing your insights, and of course our audience, we invite you to visit our partners village, and to engage with it, WSO2. I'm sure that if you have any doubts, they can solve them for you. And thank you everybody. Thank you to Farah and Ishara, and we hope you keep enjoying this event. And until next time.
Yeah, thank you, Mariana. So, and thank you, audience, for joining this session. So, obviously, if you have questions, you can come to our partner booth. So you will be around, so we can help you there too. Okay, have a good day.
Excellent.
Enjoy the event.